Welcome back, and it's time now for our very first segment. As we said in our intro, we are going to tackle together the recent, which are now prevailing to continue speaking about the Israeli genocide war in Gaza, and also the all the calls, to be accurate, for considering or probing or investigating the crimes or the crimes against humanity, the war crimes committed by Israel in the Palestinian territory. To shed more light on the whole story, we are very much delighted to have with us via phone Dr. Ayman Salah Mourad, Professor of International Law and member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us, Dr. Ayman.
Good morning, Nurmeen. Good morning, Nile TV. Good morning, dear audience.
Before going into details, sir, let's take a quick look at the current situation when it comes to the situation or the legal situation of Israel in front of the World Court.
Actually, the legal status of Israel in front of the International Court of Justice is unlawful existence and illegal existence in the Palestinian territory, and it is an occupying power according to the last resolution of the International Court of Justice. And actually this is very well known, and a lot of resolutions have been issued before in different UN organizations, and the International Court of Justice has affirmed this concept in a formal decision.
Yeah. Sir, unfortunately, for months right now, and Karim Khan, the Hague president or the head of the International Justice Court, he was here in Egypt, and he already visited El Arish, and he saw himself what's going on the ground. So, South Africa already filed a whole case on the situation in Gaza and what are the sufferings, the unprecedented sufferings of the Palestinians. Is this all going in vain? Is this all not going to be considered by the international community to take action on the ground? Is this all only ink on paper?
Actually, let's make clear that international relations are operated and run by several mechanisms. Political mechanism, military mechanism, economic mechanism, diplomatic mechanism, legal mechanism. So the international law or the legal mechanism is a part of the mechanisms of the international law. Now the international law has set its word through the International Court of Justice. Now the International Criminal Court is calling for an investigation for what's happening in Gaza, because they call for issuing an arrest warrant for the Israeli leaders, in addition, as we said, to some Hamas leaders, so as to be accurate. So the role of the international law is to state and decide whether an action or an act is lawful or unlawful. Then it is the turn of other mechanisms to enforce these roles represented especially in the Security Council.
Mm-hmm. Sir, it was only on Friday when the International Court of Justice declared that they annulled already the warrant against Ismail Haniyeh of Hamas, who already was assassinated more than 2 months ago. But they renewed the warrant against Yahya Sinwar of Hamas, in addition to also renewing this warrant, or to continue saying that there is a warrant against Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister. How do you see this, or how do you see this in front of the international community? How we should respond to that? Should we still consider that the Hamas leader are part of what's going on the ground, despite all, despite nearly 41,000 Palestinian civilians, mostly women, children, and minors who already were killed on the ground, and not to respect even the shelters or the health institutions, the schools used as shelters, all this, I mean, should they be on equal foot?
To answer this question accurately, we have to go to the roots of the Palestinian cause, to understand the roots of the problem. The roots of the Palestinian cause goes back to the covenant of the League of Nations, when they said that Palestine is one of the territories that needs an administrative help by one of the mandate powers, which was Britain. And then Britain in 1922, the declaration for the mandate stated that they will create a Jewish home in Palestine for the Jewish nation, which contradicts what has come in the covenant of the League of the Nations. Then, in 1947, a resolution 818 was issued from the General Assembly saying that the partition of Palestine between an Arab state, among an Arab state and a Jewish state. And Gaza belongs to the part of the Arab state. So now Gaza is an Arab land, a Palestinian land. So now legally Israel is an occupying power, and that's why the International Court of Justice has said. So the question is, do the Palestinians have the right to defend themselves according to international law? Yes, sure, definitely they have the right. According to the additional protocol number 1 to Geneva Conventions in 1977, according to the United Nations Charter, according to the principle of Declaration of Principles of International Law, that say this right belongs to the self-determination right. So legally speaking, the Palestinians have the complete right to liberate their land, to defend their land. Yes.
Yeah. And to have their independent Palestinian state with Al-Quds as its capital. Again, here we are talking about the borders of the 4th of June 1967, true?
Sure, yes, sure.
Okay,
sure.
But let's describe the situation from another point of view. There are rules or laws to force Israel as an occupation force to put the civilians aside, far from the conflict with the fighters or from the resistance group of Hamas, true?
Yes, sure.
Okay, meaning that Israel is considered as an occupation force.
Sure, definitely.
Okay, how I can consider the occupation force as an independent state while not to consider Palestine as an independent state? I mean here it's not only by the ICJ, I mean by the world community in general, because until the moment there are hundreds of countries who do not even consider Palestine as a state.
Actually, according to the international law, Palestine is an independent state, as I've just said, according to Resolution 181. A lot of states around the world have declared their recognition for Palestine as a state, and it is as an observer state in the UN. Why? It is not a full member in the UN, because to have the agreement to get to be a full member in the UN, you have to get the agreement or the vote of the Security Council. So here we go again to the Security Council, the superpowers of the world, the real executive power of the world. Yeah. So that's why we say, yes, Palestine is an independent state legally. Israel has its part according to Resolution 181, which contradicts with the previous resolution. But let's start from this point, as not to go very back in history. So it is legally, yes, independent. A lot of nations has recognized Palestine as a state. That's why it is an observer, non-member state in the UN. So it's a state, but non-member, but a state.
Yeah. Dr. Ayman, let's try to simplify the story for the layman in the street who only read something about Srebrenica, for example. In Srebrenica, there was a genocide war, true?
Right.
Great. What's going on is considered a genocide war by the international community and by the ICJ, or still it's not a genocide war?
Which place are you saying? I'm sorry?
What's going on for the past 11 months is considered a genocide war by Israel?
According to public international law, genocide is one of the most serious crimes to humanity according to the statute of the International Criminal Court. It is one of the 4 most serious crimes to humans. So what is genocide? Genocide is the willing killing of a special ethnic or special population for the aim of cleansing, and it is willingly done. And that's what actually is happening in Gaza. And if we look to the statute of the International Criminal Court, we'll find that three of the main crimes, the war crimes and crimes against, because war crimes like killing civilians, destruction of civilian buildings, plantations. We have,
but until the moment, sir, until the moment the ICJ described legally the situation as an Israeli genocide war on the Palestinian occupied territories, or no?
The International Court of Justice until now hasn't described it as, it is under investigation so far, because to describe a case as a genocide, it needs a lot of investigations and it needs a lot of inquiries, and this will take time. But it issued provisional measures to prevent and to hold what's happening, although Israel didn't point to these provisional measures. So it's now under investigation and under inquiry.
In your opinion, sir, can they take this action to consider the Israeli genocide war legally with, under this name? Because if this happens, meaning that Benjamin Netanyahu is going or should be on the ground in front of the whole world, described as a criminal, a war, as launching a genocide war, meaning that he is a war criminal, meaning that he is going to be considered as Milosevic and other war criminals who were already in front of the International Court as such. I mean, this is going to be his status. Would you please correct me if I'm wrong?
Sure, you are definitely right. The International Criminal Court called for, the prosecutor called for issuing a warrant arrest for Benjamin Netanyahu. And this means that Benjamin Netanyahu, when he travels to any country or state that is party to the ICC, will face charges of war crimes. And this happened before for Tzipi Livni, the previous foreign minister, when she cancelled her tour, when she was traveling to Britain, when she was traveling to Belgium, she cancelled her tour because of news of an arrest warrant. But what happens that political mechanisms works and things might change. That's why we say the international relations depend on a lot of mechanisms, not international law only. We don't have to use, or a lot of international actors use international law as a beg to justify their failure and their unwillingness to resolve the issue.
Sir, how do you see the importance of the reports of the UNRWA, the OCHA, other UN organizations, NGOs, even Doctors Without Borders or Docteurs Sans Frontières, in addition to, of course, the WHO, who already, thank God, they succeeded in their campaign to vaccinate hundreds of thousands of Palestinian children because of this fears of polio, which unfortunately erupted, and it was clear that it can spread as fire after the discovery of this 10-month-old child who is now paralyzed because of a polio case. How do you see these reports describing to the international community what's going on, and can be officially reports to be added to a big file now under investigation by the ICJ to turn the story into war crimes and to tell the whole world what's going on according to these, let me call it this way, fact-finding missions on the ground?
Sure, definitely the reports of the world organizations and the civil society organizations, and the Amnesty International, as you have heard, has recently called for inquiry and probe in the Palestinian land. All these reports present evidence for the facts going on the ground, and of course all the international courts take into consideration these reports. They also take the witness to the oral witness of the officials in these organizations. So of course it represents a very important proof and evidence for the case. What we are lacking is the political will of the superpowers or the international society, because you know Israel is backed by the US, and you know that a lot of civil society organizations recently have sent a letter to President Joe Biden, and sent a letter to UN members calling for the stoppage of arms transferred to Israel. More than 250 civil society and organizations. Imagine how many organizations on the board in such act. So, of course, it represents a very important evidence and proof.
Sir, how do you see also the importance of the public opinions worldwide? I mean, in the past few months, we witnessed together, I think all over the world and in all even Western countries, not only the Middle East or the Arab and Islamic ones, huge demonstrations even among the students in universities calling for an end to the madness which is taking place in the Middle East. And also even inside Israel, you were going to find tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands demonstrating against Benjamin Netanyahu and his administration, and they are blaming them for the death of the hostages. They are accusing them of trying to save themselves and not to think about the Israeli hostages or the Israeli people, and to continue with this bloodshed, God knows until when.
Actually, the public opinion is the most powerful and real fuel for the international community in the West, because, you know, this public opinion affects the elections of different governments, different parties. So it is very important to take into consideration the public opinion, and we have seen this in America. Even Democrats have tried to de-escalate the conflict at some time. President Joe Biden has said it clearly that they need to de-escalate the conflict because it might affect the Democratic Party's election. So definitely the public opinion is very important, and this is the first time to see this huge, wide opposition from the public opinion due to the advancement of media and social media. People can see in their homes what's happening for children in Gaza, for innocent people. Definitely very, very important factor in moving the issue.
I don't know, sir, if what I'm going to say or my coming question is going to be that much related to what's going on the ground, or this is only diving into history in vain. Sir, do you think that it's time to remind the whole world and remind the new generations of Sabra, Shatila, Qana, Deir Yassin, Al-Khalil, all these massacres which unfortunately just went like that without any punishment for the Israeli side and without even putting those behind all these massacres accountable for what they have done? Do you think it's time now to dive into history and remind the whole world and remind even us and the current generations of what took place in the past 70 years?
Definitely, I agree. Teaching new generations the history of the Palestinian cause is very, very, very important, and it keeps the issue alive. The new generations have to know the roots of the Palestinian cause, as we said, starting from the Balfour Declaration in 1917, moving till now. And they have to be aware of the massacres that took place at different times in the history of the Israeli occupation. So history sure keeps the issue alive, and I want to say that the new generation, the children that have witnessed this genocide that's going on the Palestinian lands right now, are going to be very, very different generations in face of Israel, because they have suffered themselves, they saw the lessons themselves. So I think it's very important to teach new generations about the history of the Palestinian cause.
Dr. Ayman, thank you very much for your input, sir. I really enjoyed our discussion. Thank you very much for your input, sir. We were very much delighted to have with us via phone Dr. Ayman Salah Mourad, Professor of International Law. Right after the short break, we are going to return back with more, so stay tuned.